It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when I found the videos. The kind of day where the rain drizzles down endlessly, creating a soft, continuous murmur outside that blends with the hum of the apartment. I had decided to clean out the closet. It wasn't that the closet was particularly messy, but it was something to do, a task to occupy my hands while my mind wandered through the usual maze of thoughts. It was in the back of the closet, in a box I didn't even know existed, that I found them. They were old DVDs, stacked haphazardly, almost as if they were meant to be forgotten. The box was worn, the cardboard edges frayed and softened with time, like it had been moved from place to place, each move wearing it down just a little more. My curiosity got the better of me. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally, but when you live with someone, you sometimes stumble upon things. Besides, what harm could there be in watching an old home movie? I thought maybe it was something from his childhood. Maybe family vacations or old memories captured before I was part of his life. I grabbed a few of the DVDs and carried them to the living room, the rain tapping a steady rhythm against the windows as I loaded the first one into the player. The screen flickered to life, and I settled into the couch, expecting to see grainy footage of a younger version of him, perhaps with a bad haircut or awkwardly posed in front of some long-forgotten landmark. But that's not what I saw. Instead, the screen filled with the image of him, but not the boyish, younger version I expected. This was him, as I know him now, or close enough. The video was a little older, maybe a year or two, but still, it was him. My heart did a strange little flip as I watched, confused at first, unsure of what I was seeing. He was laughing, his smile wide and easy, the way it always is when he's genuinely happy. And then I saw her. She was sitting next to him, too close, her head tilted toward him in that familiar way that speaks of intimacy, of comfort. She was laughing too, and the sound of their laughter together made my stomach twist. I paused the video, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the remote. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe just a friend or some distant relative I'd never met. But something inside me was screaming that it wasn't nothing. I forced myself to press play again, my eyes glued to the screen as if I could will the image to change, to show me something different, something less disturbing. But it didn't. The video continued, a series of clips stitched together, showing them in different places, different times. They were at a park, sitting on the bench with ice cream cones in hand, the sun shining bright overhead. Then they were in what looked like his apartment, the same apartment we now shared, the same couch I was sitting on, and they were curled up together, her head resting on his shoulder. The familiarity of it all was what hit me the hardest. It wasn't just that he was with another girl. It was that everything about the video was so normal, so everyday, like they had been together for years. Like she belonged there just as much as I did. I felt a cold numbness spread through my body as I watched them. There was a part of me that wanted to stop, to turn it off and pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. I had to know. I had to see everything, no matter how much it hurt. The video played on, and I sat there, frozen, as the story of them unfolded in front of me. There was no mistaking the way they looked at each other, the way they touched, the way they laughed together. It was clear, painfully clear, that this wasn't just some random girl. This was someone important to him, someone he had cared about deeply. When the video finally ended, the screen went black, and I was left sitting in the dark, the only sound the rain still pattering softly against the windows. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. All I could do was sit there, staring at the blank screen, trying to process what I had just seen. It felt like my world had shifted, like everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down in the span of a few minutes. I felt sick to my stomach, a deep, gnawing ache that wouldn't go away. I didn't know how long I sat there, lost in my thoughts, but eventually, I forced myself to stand up. I needed to get out of the apartment, to get away from the memories that were now tainted, from the couch where they had sat together, from the space where their laughter had echoed. I grabbed my coat and headed out into the rain, not caring that I didn't have an umbrella. The cold drops hit my face, mingling with the tears I didn't even realize I was crying. I walked aimlessly, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, sadness, confusion. They all swirled together, making it impossible to think clearly. Why hadn't he told me about her? Why had he kept these videos? Was she still in his life? Were they still together when we met? The questions pounded in my head, each one more painful than the last. I knew I had to confront him, but I didn't know how. What could I even say? How could I possibly put into words the hurt I was feeling, the way my heart was breaking? I ended up at a small cafe. Copyright, the kind of place we used to go to together on lazy Sunday mornings. I ordered a coffee, though I didn't really want it, and sat by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked street. My mind was racing, trying to piece together everything I knew about him, about our relationship, and figure out what was real and what was a lie. I thought about the times we had spent together, the moments that had felt so genuine, so real, and I wondered if they had been real for him too, or if he had just been going through the motions, still hung up on her. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How dare he keep this from me? How dare he let me believe that I was the only one, that what we had was special, when all the while he had this other life, this other person who clearly meant so much to him. My hands clenched around the mug, the anger burning hot inside me, pushing out the sadness, the hurt. I wasn't going to sit here and feel sorry for myself. I was going to confront him, demand answers, make him explain. I don't know how long I sat in that cafe. Copyright, gathering my thoughts, my resolve, but by the time I left, I knew what I had to do. The rain had let up a little, though the sky was still heavy with clouds, a dull grey that matched my mood perfectly. I walked back to the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest with each step. I was nervous, scared even, but I pushed those feelings aside. I needed to be strong, to face this head on, to get the truth. When I got back, the apartment was quiet. He wasn't home yet, and I was both relieved and disappointed. I needed more time to figure out what to say, but at the same time, the waiting was agonizing. I couldn't sit still, couldn't relax, so I started pacing, my mind running through all the possible scenarios, all the ways this conversation could go. I kept replaying the video in my head, the way they looked at each other, the way he smiled at her, and each time, it felt like a fresh wound, like I was discovering it all over again. Finally, I heard the key in the lock, and my heart leapt into my throat. He walked in, shaking off the rain, his usual easy smile on his face as he greeted me. But when he saw my face, his smile faltered, replaced by a look of concern. He could tell something was wrong, that much was obvious, but he didn't know what, not yet. I didn't give him time to ask. I just blurted it out, the words spilling out in a rush before I could stop them. I found the videos. For a moment, he just stared at me, confusion flickering across his face. And then I saw the realization hit him. His expression changed, his eyes widening slightly, and I knew that he knew exactly what I was talking about. He opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't let him. I was too angry, too hurt, and the words just kept coming, tumbling out of me in a rush of emotion. How could you keep this from me? Who is she? Why didn't you tell me? The questions came fast, each one sharper than the last. And I could see the guilt in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped as he realized there was no way out of this, no way to avoid the truth. He didn't try to deny it, didn't try to make excuses. He just looked at me, his face pale, his eyes filled with a sadness that matched my own. And then, finally, he spoke. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but the words cut through me like a knife. She was someone I loved before you. His words hung in the air between us, heavy and painful, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me, like everything I knew had been ripped away. He was still talking, explaining, but I could barely hear him over the pounding in my ears, the sound of my heart breaking. I caught fragments of what he was saying, that it was over before we met, that he had kept the videos because he couldn't bring himself to erase those memories, that he loved me, not her, not anymore. But it didn't matter. None of it mattered. All I could think about was that he had lied to me, that he had kept this huge part of his life hidden from me, and I didn't know how to get past that. We talked for hours, going around in circles, him trying to explain, to apologize, me trying to make sense of it all, to understand how he could do this to me. I wanted to believe him, I really did, but the trust had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Every time I looked at him, all I could see was the video, the way he had looked at her, the way he had smiled, and it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him I needed space, time to think, to figure out what I wanted to do. He looked devastated, but he didn't argue. He just nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat, and I hated that I was the one causing him pain, even though I knew he had hurt me first. I packed a bag, not really sure where I was going or what I was going to do, but knowing I couldn't stay there, not in that apartment, not with those memories haunting every corner. As I walked out the door, I heard him call my name, his voice thick with emotion, and I paused, my hand on the doorknob, my heart aching. I wanted to turn around, to run back to him, to tell him that we could work it out, that we could fix this. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed time, space, distance. So I kept walking, my footsteps echoing down the hallway as I left the apartment, the place that had once been our home, but now felt like a stranger's. The next few days were a blur. I stayed with a friend, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about what had happened. I just told her we were having some problems, that I needed a place to stay for a little while. She didn't ask any questions, just gave me a hug and told me I could stay as long as I needed. I spent most of my time wandering the city, trying to clear my head, trying to figure out what to do. But no matter how far I walked, no matter how many cups of coffee I drank in quiet, empty cafe copyright S, I couldn't escape the memories, the images of them together, the sound of their laughter ringing in my ears. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying everything over and over again. I thought about all the times we had spent together, all the little moments that had made our relationship special, and I wondered how much of it was real, how much of it he had truly felt, and how much of it was just him trying to move on from her. The doubt gnawed at me, eating away at the love I still felt for him, the love I wanted so desperately to hold on to. But as the days passed, I began to realize something. I still loved him. Despite everything, despite the hurt, the betrayal, the lies, I still loved him. And that realization scared me more than anything else, because loving him meant that I had to make a choice. I could either walk away, leave him behind, and try to rebuild my life without him, or I could try to forgive him, to find a way to move past this, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Neither option felt right. Walking away felt like giving up on something that had been so good, so real, something that I wasn't ready to let go of. But forgiving him felt impossible, like trying to mend something that was broken beyond repair. I was stuck, trapped between my love for him and the pain he had caused, and I didn't know how to move forward. Eventually, I knew I had to talk to him. I couldn't keep running away, hiding from the truth. I needed to see him, to hear his voice, to look into his eyes and figure out if there was still something worth saving. So I called him, my heart pounding as I listened to the phone ring, each ring dragging out the anticipation, the fear. When he answered, his voice was soft, tentative, like he wasn't sure if I was going to yell at him or hang up. But I didn't do either. I just asked if we could talk, really talk, and he agreed. We met at a park, the same park I had seen in the video, the one where they had laughed together, where they had shared ice cream cones on a sunny day. It was surreal, standing there with him, knowing that this place held memories for him that had nothing to do with me, that were tied to someone else. But I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the present, on what we needed to say to each other. We sat on a bench, the same bench I had seen in the video, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, filled with all the things we were too afraid to say, too afraid to admit. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice low and strained as he apologized again, telling me how much he regretted keeping the videos, how he never meant to hurt me. He told me he loved me, that he wanted to be with me, that she was part of his past, but I was his future. His words were everything I wanted to hear, but they didn't erase the pain, the doubt. I told him that I needed time, that I couldn't just forget what had happened, that it would take a lot of work, a lot of trust, to rebuild what we had lost. He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding, with hope, and I felt a flicker of help too, a small, fragile thing that I wasn't sure I could trust, but that I wanted to believe in. We sat there for a long time, talking about everything, about us, about our future, about how we could move forward. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time since I had found those videos, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to make this work.